Welcome to this week's episode of Campbell and Jones Meet the Monsters, a podcast we chart the cinematic legacy of the classic monsters. I'm John Campbell. With me, as always, Brendan Jones.
John Campbell, there is nothing more exciting to me than seeing a brash young filmmaker on the rise. And all I can say is, this Del Toro guy, he's going places.
I think he's got a real future.
If the networks are smart, they'd snatch him up immediately and give him a 3-camera sitcom.
I think that's exactly where this is headed. No, we're talking about 1993's Cronos, a movie I vacillate back and forth, but I'm so glad we kept on the list because it is a vampire movie. It's a very unusual vampire movie, but it is, I think it's worthy of inclusion of the show because it is still playing on the tropes and mythology and subverting it in places, but also leaning into it in other places.
I'd say absolutely. And vampire movies, well, all monster movies are going to, well, the good ones at least, often reinterpret or they do their own take on a classic thing. And by this point in the 90s, and you have this young filmmaker, you can tell grew up with the Hammer films and the 40s films of Universal. Yeah. It's there, but what he's done is he's personalized it, he's reinterpreted it, and that's fine. Every vampire movie changes the logic or the tropes or the origin story, and this guy is doing it. Doing exactly the same thing. When hopefully, if I live long enough and we get around to Shape of Water, which we have to include as a Gilman movie.
Oh, agreed.
But just talk about, again, this is a guy who absorbed, and he's famous. He's upfront about it. He absorbed like a sponge all of these influences, the same things that you and I grew up loving, and that includes comics and pulp and the classic films. He absorbed it like a sponge, and then it goes through his own personal blender, and what comes out feels familiar, but it's also been highly personalized. I'm kind of glad. Oh, here I'm on my soapbox now. I'm kind of glad he never did get the full rights to do Creature from the Black Lagoon, only because that forced him to come up with his own take, which is Shape of Water.
Which is
just like
a brilliant movie,
Though I think he would have done an amazing Creature, no doubt.
And I don't think I think it still would have felt very original. I have no doubt.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And here is clearly, as he said, I mean, this is his first feature film, and he says, I just wanted to do my vampire movie.
Yeah.
And he does, and it's unlike anything we've seen.
And yet is reminiscent of everything we've seen.
That's exactly it. It doesn't feel by rote, like, okay, I have to have this in it, I have to have this in it. You're like, no, it just feels like you studied and you've come up with your own
And
take.
That's the thing. Look, I mean, Del Toro he always makes my list of the favorite filmmakers working today because, and looking again at his directorial resume here, and he hasn't done like a ton of films, but he's done a handful. Even there are ones I like more than others, but none of them would I call bad, and all of them I would call interesting.
Well, that's the thing, is that no, I would call none of them bad, because again, we know what bad movies are.
Well, that's the other thing too, but I mean, not even like by even ones that there are ones that work better than others, but I think all of them are worth watching. This is a hearty recommend to the whole resume for me.
I completely concur. And when he knocks it out of the park,
some of them,
as he often does,
he's made a couple like legitimate classics.
Yeah, it is again something where you're forced to say that is unlike anybody else. And it has, I mean, I sometimes admire directors who are consummate workman-like directors who do solid movies but don't have a personal stamp.
I mean,
at the same time, I think the world does love auteurs.
Yeah.
And I certainly do when it's something like this, where the imagination of a guy and his loves, possibly fetishes, they're they're immediately recognizable.
Yeah.
Where you go, this could only be a Guillermo Del Toro film.
And it's interesting. He's not lumped in because he didn't come up like the Sundance route like these other guys. But I do think it's interesting. This is the same time as Tarantino and Rodriguez, Soderbergh. Yeah, all those kind of. It's interesting looking at the credits at the beginning of this movie, and it's all like Mexican film grants and schools and stuff like that.
I thought that was hilarious because it's like 4 minutes at the very beginning, and he's having to, because again, he's a student filmmaker essentially at this point as a kid.
He's made a couple of shorts right before this, one of which is on, if you have the Criterion Blu-ray, you can watch Geometria, which is one of his short films.
Well, I don't, so thanks for that. But
I do. I didn't have time to watch it, but it is on there. I've never seen it.
I just love that at the front, it's basically like going, thank you everybody for your money and your for your facilities.
And you totally see where it's like he cobbled some money from here and a little bit from over here. And one of the stories he tells on the Criterion Blu-ray is they lost a huge chunk of their money during filming, and he talks about thank God to Ron Perlman for believing in him enough to go, yeah, my money is currently non-existent, but I like this movie and I like this guy enough that I'm going to stick around and not bail on it. And I think that right there is why he's in almost every movie of his to this day.
Yeah, plus the fact that Ron Perlman's an amazing actor.
Great. I mean, it's just like the Del Toro Perlman film love story. And then I think it's interesting.
There will be books written about it. No doubt.
Then it's interesting. Movie 2, Mimic. He gets Doug Jones, who's his next collaborator for all this stuff. So it's interesting. Yep. Pretty early on, he assembles his people, and that he's just And he even talks about here. He's got Guillermo Navarro, who's his DP. He's got his production designer. Most of the people that work in the major positions on this movie have continued with him throughout his career.
Which is very lucky. He found he has collected to him, and I'm sure it happens with a lot of directors, but through his work, literally film to film, he has found his tribe.
Yeah.
And it's like, you guys get me, and the working relationship is good. So why would I give that up? It's like, let's keep going.
Yeah.
I just look at this thing, and the story he told on my little intro to the TCM version.
I watched the Criterion. You watched it on HBO Max.
I'm sure he says the same thing in that, especially since you watched the longer bit. But the whole thing that kills me about this is he says that, he presents it almost like it's a student project at the end to the whatever the Mexican Film Board kind of thing, which is overseeing this project. And deciding whether it will go on to festivals and things like that. And the guy comes out, whoever the head is, and says, not only will that not appear in any festivals, he goes, it will never be seen outside of Mexico. And the guy literally said it. And Guillermo del Toro said, he goes, I was keeping a journal back then. He goes, so I know exactly the date that this was said to me.
Yeah.
And all this is like, I wrote it down because it was so devastating. And he goes, it's not about me. It's like going, I'm not trying to shame anybody, but at the same time, he goes, I love that as kind of a, really, is that what you think?
I feel like when you get those kind of rejections, there are two kinds of people, and the people who are successful, the ones who can take that and it is devastating and then go, nah, fuck that. I'm going to find a way to make this work.
I know, but also when you think about that, what stunned me about that, besides it's a great anecdote, is you sit there and you go, what person in any kind of film judging capacity could look at this?
Yes.
And I mean, whether or not it's your genre, maybe you just think it's like, God, it's horror stuff.
What else
whatever.
is coming out of Mexico at this time too? Like, what else was around that this was somehow so far inferior?
You look at this film, there's no way. No one can look at this and say this is not a well-made film.
Jesus Christ!
There's some editing stuff and there's a slow patch and whatever, but that's true of whatever movie I can nitpick. But I'm still sitting there going, this is someone's first feature, and it feels complete, and it feels like the work of a much more accomplished person.
Dude, he's 29. He's 29 when this thing comes out.
It's just
and
nuts.
That is, I mean, that this guy, I mean, it just right away, and like we said, right away you're like, there's a voice, there's authorship, there's already the beginnings of motifs and recurring character types and actors, and you're just going like, it's because this, we were both saying it's been years since either one of us has seen this, so in the time since I've watched this, I've probably seen at least 3 or 4 more Guillermo Del Toro movies to continue to go, and I've read his novels, and you know, I'm a massive
The Strain.
Yeah, I read the whole trilogy, and I have the first one of the new trilogy that he writes with Chuck Hogan, and I watched the show, which is very Guillermo Del Toro. He directed the pilot, so you have everyone post that working in Guillermo Del Toro mold. There's just and even that's the thing, even when you get something like Pacific Rim, which I fucking love, that is a Guillermo Del Toro vision of a giant summer blockbuster movie.
That's what's so great, is that he does occasionally get like the studio film or that kind of thing, but it's inescapable. Even if you think like, oh God, this seems like he got a paycheck and he's just doing this, and then you watch it and you're like going, he can't not put the personal stamp on it. Even when he does something straightforward like mimic his second film, you're sitting there going, no, there's still a quality to it.
I read Roger Ebert's review of Mimic, and he's going, boy, this is on paper the same thing as all the other monster movies out there, but he goes, if you watch it, it is not. This is a cut way above anything else. And
Mimic is, I would say, one of his least successful films. Like, I don't like it that much.
It was compromised, and he has since restored it, so I do recommend people check out the director's cut, which is still not like 100% his vision, but is a far closer take on what he was trying to do with that movie. Surprise, surprise, the Weinsteins treated him like shit.
What? No.
Movie. Yeah, I know. It's one of those things where it's like, he had to be one of those people that when the shit came out about Harvey Weinstein, he's like, I fucking know! I told you! He's a piece of shit!
Did Harvey invite him to a hotel room?
Please, no, take your hands off me, says Guillermo Del Toro.
That's so gross.
The thing I did like reading about that movie, which we're not going to cover, which is a shame, because I do actually really like that movie, though. That was saved entirely by Mira Sorvino, because they wanted to fire him straight up on that thing. And she had the Oscar clout at that point and goes, I like this guy. And even better, I'm going to have my boyfriend at the time, Quentin Tarantino, call you and tell you why this guy is a genius. Because if anybody's going to get on the phone and go, let me tell you, this guy's the next big thing in film, it's Tarantino.
Yeah. And, I mean, Tarantino, for all of his oddness and he's not necessarily problematic, but he's controversial.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the guy is such a champion of film, and sure, specifically, unique voices.
I'm sure that defense of him directing Mimic came from probably seeing this and going, holy shit, I want to see this guy make more movies. Like, and because, man, we got to get into this here. Let's talk. Number one,
let's do it.
The poster on this thing rules.
Yep. Good poster.
Right off the bat. It's evocative. It's creepy. It introduces its own unique vampire thing with the Cronos device, but it's also got this very classical black and white horror font and stuff in it.
It's a strange design, but that is suiting. And it is all black and white, with Cronos done as if it's sort of carved out of stone, and that's all it is light and shadow, and that fits.
Feels very Val Lewton, right? Like,
and then down at the bottom, you've got I don't think that's a photograph of the woman. I think that's actually art, as in like pencil or charcoal art.
Yeah.
This is not representative of the film, but you have like a woman, head and shoulders, and she's leaning her neck back.
Yeah, no woman uses this device in the movie, but
but you've got the Cronos device on her neck. Yeah.
Which also it's never used in this capacity either, but
no,
evocative. Once again, this is a thing where it's like, okay, this is not direct imagery from the movie, but it is a great evocation of tone and style.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think it's a great I would have seen this poster and been like,
and the Cronos device is the only thing in color except for
the blood.
The taglines. Yeah, and the blood.
And the taglines are also in blood red, right? An ancient device, a modern discovery, a terrifying tale of the eternal.
That's pretty good.
I like it, man. I would have seen this.
The only thing that it doesn't evoke, but I mean that is part of the delight of the movie, is it doesn't evoke sort of the warm family thing that's going through it. That is Guillermo Del Toro. It's like, look, I know you're expecting a genre picture with exactly that, like terror and blood. You're also going to get a sweet story of a grandfather and granddaughter.
He says that in the interview. He goes, every movie I've ever made or will ever make will be about fathers and sons or fathers and daughters.
Yep.
He goes, that's it. He goes, even Hellboy, even Blade 2, even Pacific Rim, they're all he goes, that is it, man. That is the thread throughout the whole thing.
It's absolutely apparent the more of his stuff you watch.
And it never feels like, oh, here we go again.
No, because he finds different ways to do it.
And
it's just not, the thing that...
Yeah, it's not always... I mean, like in this, it's a grandfather and a granddaughter. It's not... Or sometimes it's not even a literal father-daughter.
No. Yeah, of course. Like Hellboy is an adoptive father.
Yeah, or, Nightmare Alley is kind of the whole of the community of the carnival and stuff like that,
But what he does is... You can boil it down to... Because the guy is not... shy of going into the extremely unsettling. But he does horror with heart.
Yes.
Similar to the way that Spielberg has done often science fiction with heart. It's just he knows that it means more. And it's true of a Stephen King novel.
Yes.
It means more if you care about these characters when terrible things happen to them.
And I think
you're scared.
I think that's a reason. Oh yeah. I was just gonna say, I think that's a reason why even all three of the people we're talking about here, even when the stuff doesn't hit, there's something of substance there. You can at least see the thing working, and so even the failures feel more noble for Del Toro, King, or Spielberg to me. Where I'm going like, well, this wasn't they never feel like, oh, whatever, they're just doing it again.
They're not cynical exercises. They never are. There's always something.
Even if it doesn't work, you go, this was made with such sincerity. I never see a Spielberg movie and go, Jesus Christ, he was out to lunch on this one.
No. And it is, I do love that. I think that's something that really... I would like more of, simply because character should always be a basis, even if you're dealing with huge, horrific, cosmic, or whatever themes. It's like you have to put humans in it.
Yes.
And I do think his focus, and it's so natural that he's doing a version of Pinocchio. I think.
Oh, I can't wait for that. By the way, that will have come and gone by the time you're probably hearing this. But
sure, but his leaning on a familial bond, a love between parent and child or whatever, lends all of his stuff, including this movie, they're fairy tales. Is the thing that it's like, this is a fairy tale.
So glad you said
obviously
that.
Pan's Labyrinth and Devil's Backbone are clearly
there's almost...
But I mean,
the three Spanish language films are almost feel like a trilogy of sorts, right? Like,
well, I think he does call them a trilogy.
Well, because they are. They have this same sort of... They are all about children. They are all about this sort of fairy tale, supernatural in the face of tragedy kind of
and
thing.
Also very, again, they're very rooted in his culture.
Yes.
So for us gringos, it is like a whole magical world, because this is not our iconography of horror or fantasy. it's coming from a Mexican, a Spanish
and
background.
I think that's what is so, one of the things that makes him feel so fresh is he is taking, American or British, and German expressionism to a certain extent as well, influence, and then filtering that through the culture he grew up in, and then exporting what feels like a totally fresh product.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, it is. It is a blender, it's the telepod from The Fly.
Yeah,
where he's putting the elements in there, and they get fused into something brand new, and it's just great.
You saying this is a Brundle vampire movie, man?
Yep. And I think and one thing I'm really enjoying, I enjoyed watching the film last night, obviously, because it's been a few years since I've seen it.
It's a beautiful
movie. But
movie
also,
too.
I'm enjoying talking about it just because here we are, refreshed by something that's really good.
It won't last. Savor it now.
No, I know, but I am, because it's great to recognize.
Yeah.
It's like, oh man, I would pay serious money just to be able to sit with Guillermo Del Toro and just talk.
Oh my God,
because again, I feel like we're cousins. I just feel like we get it.
It is, every once in a while you see these people in pop culture, and I do feel like it's like one of us, man. Like he's
exactly.
He's speaking the same language. He feels like he could come on this show and talk like us.
And I would just it's like, guy, I'm turning my mic off. Just go.
But it almost feels like he wouldn't be that guy. He still would be like, yeah. He'd just be another fan. It doesn't feel like there's an arrogance to him. He's just going, I love this shit, man.
He probably would ask me to stop pestering him about Doc Savage, and so I get it.
One of my favorite, he was on when Nightmare Alley was out. I heard him on Maron, and he was talking about his art collection. And Maron goes, "Hey, what kind of art you got there?" He's like, "Well, it's mostly comic art." And you just hear Maron go, "Oh,
yeah, I know, yeah."
It's like, no. I've got a bunch of Bernie Wrightson pieces.
Yeah, there you go. I bet he has a lot of was it Basil Golgos, the guy who did all the covers to famous monsters.
Yeah, he's got a lot of Frazetta and stuff like that. That kind of
Frazetta
stuff. And you just hear like for half a second, Maron going, "Hey, we're gonna talk about." Oh no, never mind, pulp shit.
Yeah. Sorry, you're married to a prestigious painter. And you're expecting that. No, sorry.
No. So let's dive into the movie itself, which is I think watching this movie again, it is, as a first film, it is very, you can see it's very small and personal, yet it implies so much scope.
Yeah, I mean, you can tell that he's probably kicked this story around in his head for a long time.
Yeah.
Because, we're getting his concept of vampirism is tied into alchemy, is tied into a real alchemist, famous legendary alchemist, Fulcanelli, I believe his name is.
Right.
And I'm just sitting there going, it's just, I love it. It is the kind of stuff that I do, like sitting there going, all right, so if I'm world building, and he gives us, and I do think it's interesting that that he is, a Mexican, Spanish filmmaker, and yet the film bounces back and forth between English and Spanish, depending on who's. So this opening narration's in English. Just telling us about. Or is that just the version that?
No. It is in English, and I was going to say, I think that's an interesting and kind of smart decision in terms of making this play to an American audience. Where
right.
It almost fools you. It almost fools American audiences into watching a foreign film, right? Like you go,
right?
Oh, well, a lot of it's in English, so. Okay.
Well, it also shows that right off the bat, for his first film, he's already going like. No, my intention is that people around the world will see this.
Well, it's interesting that he said, according to the trivia here, he originally wrote the lead role for Max von Sydow.
Oh, wow.
Who you can totally see it would have been a different movie because the Mexican culture stuff would have been weird with Max von Sydow, but he would have been fucking great in the part, of course.
He would have been fucking great in the part.
Also,
I will say that this actor, who I'm sure is very established there.
Oh, yes.
He's amazing.
Yeah, Federico Lupi or Lupi. Good Lord, yeah, this guy. And goes on to continue. He's in Devil's Backbone and Pan's Labyrinth as well.
There you go. There you go.
And yes, and many Mexican movies and TV shows.
Of course.
Long career. He died in 2017 at 83. But yes, and I believe he was a regular of Louis Buñuel films, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, wow.
Yes, he was, because Buñuel shot some of his stuff in Mexico. Yeah. Interesting there that and by the way, I learned that not because I'm a big Buñuel fan, but because Roger Ebert mentioned it in the review I read of it.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, because I've seen some Buñuel on a list of a lot of directors that I respect more than I enjoy. Where I would fit there, where I go like, I totally love what this guy. We just, as of the recording of this, we also just lost Godard the other day, and I'm going another.
We did. We did.
Jean-Luc Godard died, I think, yesterday as of the recording of this.
Wow.
At 91. I mean, the guy, and continued directing right up to the end, which I have great respect for. But another guy whose movies I really like some, but totally like bow down at what he added to film. Even if I don't love watching his movies necessarily.
Well, it is an education that film lovers will do.
Oh, yeah.
Which is you go to the big names because they're the big names. And sometimes you find that they resonate with you personally, and then they're your new favorite. But sometimes you can just appreciate, and you go, I get it. I know why this person is known and remembered.
Coming out of film
it's just
school,
his stuff doesn't, ring for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think Breathless and Band Apart are great, but it's like, but do I want to put those on? No, or sorry, Band of Outsiders is what I meant. I don't know, but bringing it back to this, I think Del Toro will be that for some people, because I do think he is a guy watching this movie. I go, this is a guy who makes quote unquote artsy movies that I love because there is still that pop sensibility in them.
Yeah.
That I can latch onto, and then the beauty of the art side of it only accentuates the genre aspects of it. But I do think also we talked about he was kicking this idea around. You were saying he originally wrote this movie in 1984.
Holy mackerel.
At that point, it was titled Vampire of the Grey Dawn.
Well, I think the name...
Well, because then he talks about, of course, that they never say vampire in this movie, which is...
No, they don't.
That's across the... Man, though, this is like maybe the fifth or sixth movie we've seen where they go, they never say vampire in the movie. It's like...
Of course.
Yeah, that's
It's
okay.
like, hey, IMDb trivia, guys, just calm down.
But
we know.
Here that makes much more sense than we were talking about in Innocent Blood, where it's like, well, that's a movie where, number one, they make it clear everybody's familiar with vampire mythos, and they also are very traditional vampires. Here, I'm not shocked that nobody says vampire in this movie, because they're more vampiric than they are specifically classical vampires.
Yeah, and it's a choice also because though this is a vampire movie, essentially, and though it's hitting a lot of the same beats, strangely, the focus is not on that state of being. It is this, again, it is a tale of basically people who want, a person who wants an extension of life and another person who has a good life he's pleased with, but it becomes something he didn't want to become.
It's something Ebert brings up in his review that I think is really interesting about this movie, which is we are so used to the cautionary tale of immortality is so ubiquitous across literature, film, everything, right? But the idea of immortality being thrust upon someone is kind of a unique take. And then, of course, juxtaposed against the guy who is willing to go to the ends of the earth to achieve immortality. And then this is in Guillermo's interview on it, talking about, but at what cost? Do you really want to be alive forever if you're a fucking gross monster?
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Like, what kind of... He goes, that's not... I thought this was a great Del Toro quote. He goes, that guy is battling for you more years, not more life.
Right, exactly. And I mean, that's made very blunt subtly in the film, where it's sort of
he's
like
not a subtle filmmaker.
Not subtle.
No,
you have the nephew character played by Ron Perlman saying like, wait, he wants to. That guy can't even take a shit on his own.
Yeah.
And he wants to live longer.
Yeah.
It's like he wants more life, but look at what his life is. That's bullshit. There's also the drug metaphor. It's not like, again, he's not reinventing the wheel, Guillermo.
He never is. It's all
because these are common themes. Like vampirism is kind of this addiction thing. Yeah. And that's quite moving when you have this gentle old man and suddenly he's like going, oh, give me more of the good stuff. And how ashamed he looks when like his granddaughter sees him. He's like, no, I'm fine. Don't worry about it. And you're like, ooh, it's all about how well is it done. Oh, it's done very well. And everything hits. Everything hits in this. Man, I'm sorry. I loved it.
I did too. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm mistaken. The Boonwell regular is the guy who plays the uncle, not the old man here.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Claudio Brook is the.
Right.
Yeah. Who's in a number of things, both Mexican and in various other countries as well. He's even in a James Bond movie. Yeah, that's right. Been a while since I've been able to talk about 007 for a second, but there he is. He's in License to Kill, which is, of course, the Latin set one, so that kind of makes sense.
That makes sense.
I'm as mentioned before, a big defender of the Dalton movies. I think he.
I am mainly because Dalton is awesome. He's a great James Bond in movies that don't deserve him.
I think Living Daylights is better than License to Kill.
It's true.
And I don't think License to Kill is bad, but it's a lost era where they're not quite sure what to do next, but they do have the right guy, which is unfortunate. That it's just sort of like, and a guy who was really excited to be doing Fleming's Bond.
He deserved better, is what everyone agrees on.
And he certainly, it's not like it ever damaged his career. The guy is still out there and crushing it. So.
Yeah, Timothy Dalton is living his best Timothy Dalton life.
Everybody watch Doom Patrol. It's great. We start with the story of this alchemist. He's where is he from originally? He's fled. Is he Spanish?
I think he's Italian.
Yeah, and he flees to Mexico.
Yeah,
because
in the what century?
I think it's 15th century is what they say.
Yeah, I think so.
Because he created this device. He was the watchmaker for the elite there, and he created this device though that basically grants eternal life. So he claims.
Yeah,
the Cronos device.
The Cronos device, and it's like they're in the narration. They're kind of like, look, I don't know if it worked or not, but I'll tell you this much: there was a horrible earthquake in 1930, whatever. Mm-hmm. And in the ruins, and this is also in whatever Mexican city it's supposed to be. They found this guy with this crazy white skin, like marble, and he had very nicely a stake through his heart.
I did like that quite a bit.
Yeah, a piece of wood has gone through his heart. So his immortality is ended, but they do go, yep, that was Fulcanelli. He was still alive in 1930, so I guess it worked. But they never found the Cronos device. But when they opened up where his chambers of where he lived, they found all kinds of notebooks and stuff that's never been reported.
They show a guy hanging upside down being drained of blood.
Oh my God. They show these like basins full of blood and a nude dead man hanging by his ankles, draining blood into one of the basins. You're like, we're off and running.
Del Toro never afraid to shy away from the truly horrific and grotesque, yet it never feels grimy or exploitation. It always fits into this fairy tale, and by fairy tale I mean classic Grimm's fairy tale
exactly
sensibility. It never feels like he's just like, let's make this gory for the hell of it, or even Cronenbergian like body horror necessarily. There's bits of that. You've really got a guy like reaching into his own stomach in this movie, yet it all feels of a piece with this very large. I don't react to it the same way I guess I do in like a Cronenberg movie.
Well, in this, one thing, very rarely are people screaming in pain,
Yes.
except for a couple parts. But also, he's smart enough to know. And Cronenberg is not always smart enough to know.
But I do
But
love him so, man.
but they're
Yeah.
different
Yes.
filmmakers. But essentially, what Guillermo Del Toro, who does not shy away from it, but he's smart enough to know it's the implication.
Yeah.
It's more about the concept that is going to unsettle people.
Yeah.
Than showing you stuff, because you can get desensitized to effects and blood, and you're like, okay, right,
I
yeah,
think that's
some
almost
latex.
Cronenberg's goal, though, to a certain extent, right? Like because Cronenberg makes colder movies.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is a warmer film, so I think there is sort of a thing, and also the ubiquitous nature in a lot of Cronenberg's movies of the body horror is meant to be enter a world where this is commonplace to a certain extent.
Yeah, with him, the thing is, he's going for something so visceral that he says, "You thought I was going to cut away, then, didn't you? Nope.
Yeah.
You thought I was going to cut away there? Nope." He's like, "I'm going to stay on this because I know it's just getting worse and worse for you." And so that's his thing.
And I'm not going to add anything to it. I'm not going to stylize it. I'm going to present it very matter-of-factly. It's ugly and disturbing, and you're just going to have to look at it in an almost clinical manner.
Yeah. If he did something that was like well, I don't know why this thought popped in my head, but if they did something like Master and Commander, if he had filmed that, he literally would have, for about 10 minutes, shown the sawing off of the guy's limb.
Well, Paul Bettany would have been the main character. There's no question.
He would have been the main character, and you would have seen that serrated blade going through it, and you're like, it's tough enough when you watch it as is, but it's like, no.
And Peter Weir doesn't show you that much of it, really, in his movie.
Nope.
But it is fucking disturbing. So no, I agree. But I just thought going off on the Cronenberg tangent there, I was thinking about that with some of the kind of body horror in this movie. I was just going, oh, how interesting, because of course Cronenberg is the body horror guy, and now his son is following in his footsteps with. If anyone's seen Brandon Cronenberg's films, they are similarly disturbing. It almost seems like he's trying to outdo the old man with some of that stuff.
I haven't seen his movies.
Possessor, really interesting, messed up little sci-fi horror movie. Which, like, it's one of those where it's like, it's great, but it's with the caveat of their recommendation of know what you're in for, because a lot of people are not going to be into it. Okay, so we collapsed. The building collapsed. We talked about all that stuff. We go to modern day with this antiques dealer, Jesus.
Well, I will say that just to set up what they're doing there is when the camera's moving around the alchemist's place, and they're basically saying they never found the Cronos device.
Right.
The camera is letting us, the audience, know, because it zooms in on this guardian angel statue, and it's like zooming in on its eye. It's like going, don't worry, the Cronos device is in there. I'm like, oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
So it's a nice bit of like the narrator doesn't tell us, but we know because the camera just showed us where it is.
Especially when we're going to see that in the antique shop here.
Right,
and see multiple characters interact with it. You're like, oh, that's the thing.
And here you have the guy who runs the antique shop is, I mean, again, maybe it's just because, I know that the Pinocchio film is coming. This guy feels like Geppetto.
He does.
He is a warm, grandfatherly guy with a mustache, and he has this beautiful relationship with his granddaughter, who for most of the movie you think is mute, but she says a couple of words at the end.
Yeah,
she's just this big-eyed.
She only really says one word.
I thought she says two, but yeah, she does say grandpa at the end and so forth. But her name is Aurora. I mean, again, there's a lot of on-the-nose stuff. Like, her name is Aurora. That means dawn, light. Oh, I get it. And the sinister millionaire guy's name is LaGuardia, and his nephew is Angel, Guardian Angel. Oh, I get it. Yeah. So there's all these little
and our main character is Jesus Gris, which could be, as it says here, Gray Jesus.
Yep. Exactly.
No, I mean, once again, he's not subtle, but the worlds he makes that his movies are set in aren't subtle. It's not a
No,
that's not
I
a
don't mind
negative.
that. That adds to the fairy tale nature of it.
It does. It does. Did you know that Universal Pictures wanted to remake this here in the States as an American film?
I wouldn't be surprised.
I love this story in the trivia here. They offered, where is this here? They offered him a fair amount of money to do this.
They wanted him to do it.
No, just for the rights to it, I should say.
Oh, just for the rights.
Yeah, they wanted to do that. Where the hell was this? I was just looking at it. No, that's not it. Oh, yeah, here we go. He met with Universal, where they told him they wanted to buy the rights to this film so they could remake it. Del Toro's response was, "Who wants to see Jack Lemmon lick blood off a bathroom floor?" I mean, I kind of do, actually, now that he's put that image in my head.
Yeah, I do too, kind of. It's true.
And it does feel like that's probably dead on for the casting in mid-90s. American studio would have been like, Jack Lemmon in a performance you'll never forget, you know?
Well, I'm sure they were going to, like, where's our warm, likable grandfather character who's the least likely that you'd see licking blood off a floor?
I mean, I'm just bummed that we never got a Jack Lemmon vampire. Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau are grumpy old vampires. Come on, there's a movie.
Well, when I was watching this, by the way, I just in my brain, I was like, I know his name is Jesus Grease, but the whole time I just kept thinking in my mind, I was like, I'm going to call him Grandpire.
Yeah,
because that's the whole thing. Is he is definitely Grandpire.
Okay, just there you go. Walter Matthau is Grandpire.
Is Grandpire.
Fetch me my blood. There'd be some.
That's
joke.
type O. Yeah. Now it's garbage.
Yeah, now it's garbage. He'd take out the fangs that fit in, right? He's got the false fangs.
Yeah, they're that's great.
Yeah. I mean, dude, this is about the time he's playing Mr. Wilson and Dennis the Menace, so Matthau might have done Grandpire. In fact, they might have bought the rights to this and then changed the title to Grandpire. Really, that would have been.
Well, that's the nightmare studio system joke, the parody of. It's like, oh, we got the rights to this very cool yet somewhat obscure Mexican horror film.
Yeah,
we've done a few tweaks.
It's now
and Cronos becomes Grandpire.
It's now a PG-rated family comedy with Walter Matthau and little Haley Joel Osment.
What time is it? I told you never to knock on my coffin till it's 6:45 p.m.
Oh. Yeah, he would rise up straight up like the classic vampire and then be like, "Oh, my back." And he would still somehow be sipping blood, but out of like beer cans.
Yep.
Because he's still just the guy from Bad News Bears.
We have made this movie.
Grandpire. For your consideration. Could have been a late career Oscar. That's all I'm saying. Let's see. Yeah, so they...
he runs the antique store.
The antique shop. There's this weird guy who comes in, right?
Don't we first get, or is that after this? Where do we get the little montage of their life? Is that after the weird guy?
No, sorry, that I do have family montage here because we see him and his wife and the granddaughter at breakfast.
The wife, though it's clear that the granddaughter's not as fond of the grandma, but the grandmother and the grandfather have a comfortable relationship. She's a dance teacher. He's just kind of a doddering guy who runs an antique store, and the silent little granddaughter, and she clearly loves her granddad and is like, oh, I'll take, because the grandma's the one who's like, sit up straight, finish your breakfast, that kind of thing. But we're just seeing a little slice of life. And then at the antique store, this sort of twitchy thug guy comes in.
Yes. And he's looking around, and I like that Grease is trying to be like, well, can I help you with something? And the guy saying nothing, and he's fondling this statue eventually that they find.
Yeah, he's looking at every statue, but specifically when he's seeing any that look like an angel, he's and a lot of them are wrapped in paper. He's cutting. I thought this is pretty ballsy. Like, you don't go in a store and if something's wrapped, I would feel weird if you just started opening things. But yeah, so he starts carving away at the paper, and it's like, oh, this one's an angel. Great. He's clearly scouting for something.
Yeah.
And he goes, no, thanks, I'm good.
Right. Yeah. And so then he leaves and reports it to somebody outside what he saw, which of course is what we'll.
Yeah, we don't see that yet, right? That who he's talking to.
I think we see him go outside with another guy, and we don't quite know what the deal with it is, but he's talking to somebody, and it's just sort of like, well, that was weird.
Yeah, it's like there are lots of, because again, the little girl is pretty much mute. There are a lot of the movie is just takes between grandfather and granddaughter. Like, he looks at her like, huh?
I mean, that's the other thing too, with it being in a foreign language. Probably mostly in Spanish, but I don't know. It bounces back and forth. But there's also just not a lot of dialogue in general in the movie.
It's true. It's true, because he is comfortable enough.
Yeah.
Where he's just like,
that definitely feels like an older filmmaker thing, right? Where you're going like, dude, I don't need to rush this thing. He's in no hurry to get anywhere in this thing.
Yeah.
Which and it's not that long. It's only like a 90-minute movie anyway. And I think it moves pretty well for the most part.
Yes.
So they're like, well, we better take a look at the statue this guy was looking at, and this is where it's missing. It's an angel statue that is missing one of its eyes. Yeah. And this is where the cockroaches come out of it.
Yeah, it's just grandfather and granddaughter sitting there doing a puzzle while the statue is nearby, because he was curious about why are they curious about it. So it's near him, it's unwrapped now, but they're just not paying attention to it. And then roaches start coming out of the eye of the statue.
I love this little beat of the little girl not being afraid, but just smashing these things.
Oh, again, it is about, he's not subtle, but still, what a nice sort of setup, because here we have the granddaughter not like freaking out, but just taking something and just going bam, bam, beating the shit out of roaches. And it's the grandfather who is so sweet. And he's the one who's like grossed out and like, ooh, blood. Yeah. And he just has a reaction shot, and you're like, great, because we know where he's going.
We know where he's going. Now, the
sight of a bug getting smashed.
What we don't know is this smashing of a creature kind of thing will play out later with the granddaughter too.
Word.
Which is great. And so they're like, well, we better take a look at what's up with this thing. And this is where they pry open the base of it and find what they don't know. It just looks like a gold scarab thing. And that's something Del Toro talked about in the interview, was wanting it to look like a valued possession of greed, right? That the idea that it's gold and ornate, and there's an avarice to wanting to possess it, right? I mean, Del Toro is one of those guys who does think out everything. He's talking about throughout the whole movie, the only time the color red is used is when it's in reference to life and or blood. So the little girl wears a red coat. All the blood is red. The one drop of blood on the floor of the black and white tiled bathroom. And it is stuff like that where you're going like, man, that is the stuff that kind of separates the real master filmmakers from the rest, are the people who are thinking about stuff like that. And not everybody has to think to that level, but when you're working in this kind of film, this is how you cannot be subtle. You need to be this smart about it. Otherwise, it's a dumb movie.
Yeah.
I think that's what I took away from that, is like, you have to really calculate what you're doing and be very smart about it.
It's masterful filmmaking from a guy who's 29.
I know. And he's done a couple of short films and a little bit of TV directing prior to this. Is what his career is. So so they open it up, they find the device. Nothing happens with it yet. Now we cut to Ron Perlman as Angel De La Cruz? De La Guardia.
No, De La Guardia.
Of course. Jeez. And Perlman speaking English. Now this, according to the trivia, the script originally was meant to have him speak Spanish. Perlman tried this, but Del Toro said his Spanish was totally unusable for the majority of his dialogue, and said, you know what, let's just flip the whole thing around. You're an American guy in Mexico. You're speaking English primarily with a little bit. You understand Spanish. You can speak it here and there, and he drops a couple phrases, but let's primarily have you speak English, which I think...
It works. I mean, you get the idea that, I mean, obviously he's the American nephew of this millionaire guy.
It adds layers
who's been waiting for that guy to die so he can take over his business.
Oh my God.
And so clearly he was raised around Spanish speakers because he does understand it completely. Mm-hmm. I do think it's interesting that they all understand his English. That's
kind of
I'm like, okay, that's maybe more of the stretch, because why would they logically all know English? But it works because he also does toss out enough Spanish phrases, and to my ear, which is not good at all, I'm like, I don't know, it seems convincing. Seems like he knows it. He's just choosing not to speak Spanish all the time.
Yeah, and I think that once again, Del Toro goes, these peppering in a few phrases makes it seem legitimate, but if he's saying all of his lines, it was probably affecting his performance, because he's focusing on, I don't really speak Spanish, so I'm trying to think of... that's tough, man. It's tough to act in a language you are not fluent in. I don't know how. I wouldn't want to try that. For a whole performance, at least. So he comes in now to the antique store and buys the statue, not knowing, of course, that they have removed the Cronos device from it.
Yeah, and this is another good scene because, and again, you have someone like Ron Perlman. So you've got this
by the
thing
way,
where...
is this the first... I was watching this yesterday and going, is this the first Perlman we've had on this show? That seems impossible. How is that? But it just seems like he's so, part of this genre and all the makeup and everything and stuff like that. You would have thought somewhere in the 80s we would have come across him, but no, this is our first Perlman, and by God...
He was only known at this point from TV. He was only known for Beauty and the Beast.
They talk about, in Ebert's review, he goes, Ron Perlman of TV's Beauty and the Beast. I'm like, ooh, right. He'd done Quest for Fire, which definitely had a little bit of cachet.
Oh, yes, Quest for Fire. That's true.
And he was popping up here and there. But yes, the big thing was TV's Beauty and the Beast. A not amazing show that he is really good in, though.
Yeah. I'd say, again, a decent concept, but it was pretty cheesy.
And
but you had a couple of good actors in it.
Like a lot of that stuff, as we always talk about, it was a good concept that quickly devolved into just being a generic TV show.
Yep.
Where you just go like, okay, now they're going to solve some murders or something. And great, whatever. But that
I also thought it was really weird anytime the tea kettle would start talking and singing. I was like, I don't get this shit.
Man, yeah, but a show I've definitely seen a handful of episodes of, mostly because I'm such a huge fan of Ron Perlman's.
But I'd say all three actors in that show were good. They just weren't. I mean, because you've got Ray Dotrice is always great, and you had, of course, Linda Hamilton. She was great too.
And you even had somebody like Armin Shimmerman in a recurring part and stuff. I mean.
Oh yeah. Taking me back. But here, what I like about the scene is we do get the impression this guy is dangerous or a threat. Yes. But I will say that he is being at least surfacely charming.
And Perlman's good at that. Because Perlman is big, intimidating. He's got that big brow and kind of a scary face. But he is, and if you've seen him in interviews, what a lovely guy.
Oh my God,
he can turn.
But here he's playing to the little girl. He's doing a little magic trick with a piece of gum.
Yeah,
he's like, "Oh, you want?" And then he's also doing the thing with the
noses.
Okay, again, here's where he didn't need to do this. Guillermo didn't need to give a life to all these characters. But for instance, when we meet the embalmer and the guy who does the makeup for the corpses, they have personalities and they have 5 minutes of screen time. He decided that all the characters, no matter who, have things.
Yep.
And in this case, Ron Perlman's character just has a stack of cards with different nose shapes on them that you would get from like a plastic surgeon, and he's just randomly as he's talking to them about getting the statue of the angel, he's like holding up, like, what do you think about this one?
Yeah.
And they're like, no. What do you think about this one? So his character
there's
is...
no setup for it before this just comes out. And then it's a running thing throughout the movie.
It's a running thing, which of course also plays in with he gets his nose bashed like 2 or 3 times in the movie.
I love him listening to the audiobook later about, you've chosen plastic surgery,
Yeah, it's like, here are the strengths and weaknesses of plastic surgery.
And you just go, and there's no other commentary on it. It's just,
his uncle never even brings it up.
This guy is not happy with how he looks. And he just needs his uncle to die so he can have the money to do something about it.
Yeah, it's so weird. Speaking of... we're about to find out what this is kind of about. He is working for his millionaire, or I don't know, millionaire, but rich uncle
who runs some kind of factory.
Some sort of factory thing.
Yeah.
Who's very ill, and he knows of the Cronos device. He has the books of Fulcanelli, so he knows how it works.
And this scene where he goes into his uncle's clean room, very Howard Hughesian.
Exactly.
Which is cool. The way he's got to put the booties and the mask on and go through.
And when he goes in, it is this sterile, sort of hospital-y room. But I love that all of the previous angel statues that he is located that aren't the ones he has kept, and they're kind of like hanging under plastic, sheets. But he's just got them as if it's a collection. It's a weird thing, and I dig it.
I dig it as well. It's just, once again, it's that thing in writing I think we look for where it's just that one next step. It's just thinking a little bit more than the surface does a lot. Like we're saying, even side characters get just something, a little, and a lot of the movies we watch don't do this, and I think that's where we get frustrated. There's no life.
Well, also, the smart, the intelligence in that, as not just the writing but the filmmaking, is where... Yes, he took that extra step, but he is smart enough not to lean on that. As if, because you'll sometimes see filmmakers go, look how much I did with this, and then you spend too much time on that, and you're like, that does not add to the story.
I feel like you see a lot of that in a few years once you get the Tarantino reactions where people go, got it. Yeah. Everybody needs a quirk or an obsession or, something like that.
And it's all about these non sequitur conversations that will go on too long because that's what Tarantino does. It's like, this is my Royale with cheese scene.
Right.
And you're like, no, that doesn't add anything.
No. And that's not you. That's you attempting to be. That's doing the opposite of what works about Del Toro, which is he is always himself in these movies. And it's always feels. And same thing with Tarantino. It's the Tarantino knockoffs that don't. I just watched Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead. Boy, that is. It's better than a lot, but it is.
Yeah, it is one of the better-ish.
And a lot of that cast is great. But there's so many times when I'm going like, oh my God, have we seen every Tarantino movie a lot here? Because this is you trying to do Pulp Fiction. But yeah, and that's on the list of the big hit with Mark Wahlberg and stuff like that.
There are way too many. I saw the big hit in the theater, but it was because friends wanted to see it.
Yeah, that movie was very forgettable. And I like a lot of the cast in that. Okay, so Perlman goes. And let's see. Yes, he looks at the nose cards. Okay, so then we're gonna go now to the. Oh no, sorry. We're gonna look at the device. Actually, is what's next. The grandfather, Grease, and the granddaughter actually are examining the device, and this is where it's gonna stab him for the first time.
Right. Yeah.
See, they're gonna go to the tango class because that's where he's gonna get his wife to fix the patch up the wound. But yeah, they're looking at this thing, and it's got a dial. This is interesting because I feel like he very much incorporates the same sort of mechanic in Hellboy with the Nazi guy who's cranking himself.
Yeah, I think there's again, in part of his stew of influences, I don't know exactly where it comes from, but you look at any of his movies, and he has a real steampunk sensibility.
Unquestionably, yeah.
Yeah, he loves mechanisms.
Yep.
And so his idea of vampirism.
how much focus there is on the movements of the robots in Pacific, even in something like that,
Yeah.
which is far more high tech. There is still this idea about like gears and joints and this and that. We're going to see the inner workings of these machines. Yeah.
So this is almost like, it looks like a small music box or one of those perfume boxes in gold, sort of oval shaped, but it does have this gem on top that can be pressed or turned or something. And when he does that, he's just playing around with it. He doesn't know what this thing is.
He even says it's a toy to the girl.
Yeah, it's like, oh, it's a toy because it has these spider legs that come out. And first they're slow. And again, even this is a brilliant choice. It does look innocent.
Yeah.
Like these little walker legs come out, and that movement is slow. Once they're fully deployed, though, then they go chunk.
Yeah.
They move fast and they pinch in, and he's like, ah! And it clearly is digging into the palm of his hand.
Blood's now pouring out of his hand. Yeah.
Blood is pouring out. And when he pulls it off, there's a full-on hole in the middle of his hand.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. No, agreed.
It is. I mean, it's dealing in the kind of vampire imagery without doing fangs and stuff like that, but it is still the puncturing of skin, the blood pouring out, the all that sort of gothic vampire stuff is still here. And so then they go to where the wife is teaching a tango class, and he's like, yeah, I badly fucked up my hand. And we see her dressing the wound and pulling metal shavings out of it.
Yes.
It leaves a
think
remnant.
Is that because it's just old?
I think that's the idea, because they do it later too. He pulls out another one from his chest later too.
Yeah, that's right.
Like it's leaving pieces of it.
And the wife examines one, and she's like, that looks like a bee stinger.
Yeah. Which is cool.
It's all cool.
I know the whole movie. Sometimes when the movies are good, I'm just like, that's just good, man.
No, I know.
Yeah, you just go like,
this is such a rare podcast for us. We're just going, and this is awesome, and then this happens, and it's cool.
It just turns into the Chris Farley show, right? Remember?
That was awesome. That thing came out and it was all like, and then they're like, ah.
Yeah, it was awesome, man.
That was pretty awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, they let's see, they go, he gets the device. Oh yeah, so dude, here's my Jeff Foxworthy bit about if you wake up in the middle of the night and you feel real thirsty, but the water's not doing it for you and you're craving blood, you just might be a vampire.
Oh man, I can't wait to see your special on ABC where you do your "You Might Be a Vampire"
You just
thing. That's
might
be great.
a vampire.
You might just be a vampire
because
or a grandpire.
Yeah. Hey, summer 1994. Walter Matthau sticking his fangs in the movie. Yeah. Somebody get me another bag of blood.
I'm peckish. Bring me a virgin.
Yeah. He's just doing bits in a chair basis. That's all. You need any more vampire lines? Ugh.
I gotta go back to my trailer.
Yeah. Jack and I are supposed to be making a movie about a cruise ship next, so get me out of this cape.
I was always happy that they got work that late in their careers and they still had their magical chemistry.
Absolutely.
But God, it really was just like, where can we put the old dudes next?
I like Out to Sea. Odd Couple 2 was the one too far for me. That was where I was like, oh,
you don't mess with that.
No,
leave that alone.
It's like we were not dying for a sequel to that, and on top of that to be, a wacky road trip comedy. That feels like the next story for those guys, right?
Felix, I swear to God.
And yes,
I'm never letting you drive again.
Yeah, it's that kind of thing. And you get I think you get airbag jokes, and I think you get them in the back of trucks. And I mean, just with chickens and shit, whatever. It is like, oh boy, I think we're done here. And as much as I love those guys. So yeah, it is a sad thing because you're going like, still love them. Never blame them.
It's you going, check.
Yeah, I'll just, I'll just see myself out of this movie theater. He's pouring this pitcher of water and it's not satiating him, but this extremely once again another vividly red thing. This just pile of bloody meat. I don't even know what this is. It's just raw
It
strips
might
of
be
meat.
liver or something.
It
that's
looks
sitting
like
there on a plate.
it's fatty and bloody and just
Yeah.
it doesn't look appetizing at all. Except to this guy
Well,
who's going.
it's gonna get cooked, okay?
Yeah, but I'm saying in
Calm
its current
down.
form, it's literally sitting in a plate of blood.
Yeah,
and it's
yeah.
just bright red, and he's going num num num.
He does say num num num, and I
Nom,
thought that was a
nom,
weird
nom.
choice. But I was
And
like,
I went,
Guillermo,
and I
I
went,
trust you.
No subtitles, so that I guess that just is num num num.
I guess it is just num num.
He says num num num, and it comes up. I'm hungry. So yeah, he let's see. Yeah, so he and he's like, "Oh well, I know I said I was going to put it away, but let me get that gold device, baby."
At least here in the
jonesing.
beginning when he's first messing with it, it seems to be all about his own blood at this point.
Yeah.
Because using it, even though it seems to be feeding off him, it's making him feel better. It is like addictive. He's getting something out of it that's almost orgasmic.
He's because
and if you wanted to see an old man,
you get
really
that
enjoying
sense.
it.
He's got his shirt open and he puts it on, and he is like, "Oh, that's the stuff." But then when he sees his granddaughter, he closes up the shirt. He's like, "Oh no, I don't know what was going on."
It's like
also
it's done as an awkward thing, like you'd walked in on your grandfather masturbating.
He prays to God before he uses it the second time. He knows there's something evil or something dark about this at the very least.
Yeah.
So I do think that's the thing where he's like, but also gotta have it. We're getting into the addiction stuff, and that's just, it always works so well because it's such a great one-to-one thing of the vampire as addict metaphor.
I love that when he wakes up the next morning, he's feeling great.
Oh yeah.
But he's already messing with the blinds, and the wife is like, "What's the problem?" He goes, "It's too bright in here."
I know, I did like that.
And it's like the automatic.
Now, in Grampire, when he wakes up, they'd play, "I feel good." Oh, I got a spring in my step.
That's exactly what would happen. Yeah. And here, all we get is him at the mirror in the bathroom deciding, you know what? What if I shave off my old man mustache?
Yeah. I do love the wife's reaction to this, where he's like, "Do you like it?" She's like, and he goes, "You don't like it?" She goes, "No, this feels like such a real marriage to me, where it's like, I can't say that I fucking hate it, but I definitely do."
Read it that way, actually. That scene is, she's
taken aback for sure.
She's taken aback, but it's clear, like, when he walks off, she's like going, damn. Like, she's seeing him for the first time again, like, my husband is somehow getting hotter.
He's
like, and that's the point, is that
to be growing
he becomes invigorated, and he's got new life in him, and he's feeling younger and snappier.
I do like that they don't lean too hard into like the makeup for it. He shaves off his mustache. It is more about a sense of feeling, and he's looking. They don't start
darkening his hair or anything.
No, that would have been too far. That would have taken it into silliness.
It would have taken it into classical vampirism. Are we gonna have this argument again?
Well, that is an interesting thing in vampire stories. Sort of like, does it revert you to a younger age, or does it just stop you where you are? Right? Because
I've always thought it reverts you to the age you were when you passed.
Yes, that's what I took it to as well. But so here it's just rejuvenating him in energy and spirit more so than in, my God, look, his skin is smooth, and by the end of this movie, he's played by, maybe Grampire would be played by a hunk by the end of the movie.
Well, what's interesting by the end of the movie, because, and I appreciate this, is that there's still some vagueness and confusion as to what the end game is, because Fulcanelli, when he's discovered and he is dead, he is chalk white. Is that because he died at that point, or was his evolved state actually this chalk white being that wasn't going to die?
That's what it seems like, right? Because we see that with Jesus, right? When he's peeling the dead skin, it's revealing that white vampire skin.
Yes, but there is also the possibility that that's just new skin, and that it would then over time actually fill out with color and just make him a younger, healthier guy.
Well, and that's the thing. Maybe it's a vampire thing too, which we've seen where it depends.
It's like
on
molting.
How
it's like,
much...
okay, here's my new skin.
But another thing we've seen is it becomes paler when there's less blood in the system because you're not feeding stuff either.
Exactly.
So that
right.
could be a
so,
piece
I mean,
of it
that
too.
could be
because we see it when, spoilers, I guess, when Jesus dies at the end of the movie, he is getting whiter and more decrepit, and he's going that kind of Gary Oldman Dracula route, which I did see in the trivia.
Our last shot is of him fully molted.
In the trivia, dead. It says that's a reference to Gary Oldman Dracula, and I do not believe that.
No, not at all.
They go, I clearly meant to evoke Gary Oldman's Dracula. I'm like, no, I think that's just general vampire imagery, you guys.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt Guillermo Del Toro would have seen Bram Stoker's Dracula.
But he would have had to be like right on top of that.
Yeah, and I don't for a second think he's like going, "Ooh, that gives me an idea."
That gives me an idea. Right now for the movie, I'm going back to set to shoot because that's how fast he'd have to get it in the movie. This is like the same year. My God.
Yeah.
No. So yeah, he doesn't like the light. He's looking younger, but when he gets to his antique shop, it's been trashed.
Yeah, it is fully trashed, and I do like. I like the fact that we're just constantly saying I like. Yeah. But the scene here where, I mean, he knows who's behind it.
Don't worry. Well, he does, but there's also the card that Ron Perlman leaves.
Yeah, but he picks up the card, which also like, oh yeah. But I love the fact that the whole place is ruined, and that little touch of him going, he just starts scooting that one last like glass jar towards the edge of and he just tips it over for it to break because he's like, what's the point?
Yeah,
I love it.
I love that. Yeah,
it's a nice touch,
and it's a nice just like
yep,
and then it crashes,
smash,
and then we cut from that. It's a good transition to cut then from that to him arriving at the De La Guardia factory.
Mm-hmm.
And I do like the note Perlman leaves on the back where it's "We're always open."
Yeah, it's like we're open all night.
Yeah,
come on by.
So he comes there. And he's like, what the fuck, man? I do love that he's like, you wrecked my shop. And Perlman still is like, Mr. Grease, you know?
Oh, yeah. And another interesting bit, which I think is after this scene, because you have Ron Perlman talking to his uncle after Grease leaves. And he's like, what is this thing you're looking for and what does it do? All of the stuff that we see Ron Perlman doing for his uncle, he's following orders, and he has no idea what any of this is about until later. I just think it's great. He's just like, I don't know, my uncle says I got to go find these statues, and he's convinced this guy has whatever was in there.
I know. It's
sort of great.
He's just like, I'm just going to keep following orders until this old son of a bitch dies.
And one thing I would love to talk to Guillermo Del Toro about, by the way, is whether there was also an influence. There was a one-season show in the early 70s, an American show.
Yeah.
And I don't rule out that he didn't see this.
Oh, I 100% think there's a good chance he saw anything from TV in that era.
A show called The Immortal. And that show was about a young guy. It's sort of like Unbreakable in a way, but a young guy who gives a blood transfusion after some kind of accident. And it's a guy who's supposed to be in his,
even.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's supposed to be like in his 40s, but he looks like he's 30. And it's after the transfusion happens that he does unknowingly that the guy that gets the transfusion suddenly becomes crazy well. And then they discover this one guy has blood that can restore health and rejuvenate. And he's himself probably immortal, and so he goes on the run, and it's billionaires, sick billionaires, who are sending men after him, hunting him down for his blood.
That's actually a good idea for a show.
It is a good idea for a show, and I can only assume that it was 1970 and probably not so well done, but it's a great concept.
16 episodes. They made 16 episodes. You can buy it on DVD.
I think they shut it down after 6 or 7 episodes, and then they only aired the other ones like in syndication. So it was canceled before the season even ended. But it's a good concept.
I can imagine that. I just typed in Guillermo Del Toro and the Immortal TV series. Didn't call it. He's never spoken about it, but still could be. By the way, are you excited for his anthology Netflix show that he's.
I certainly am,
yeah,
sir.
that looks cool, man. I want to see the Guillermo Del Toro take on like Twilight Zone.
Me too.
So let's see here. Yeah, so he goes there.
This is Jesus meeting with De La Guardia,
who's going to explain the device because he's got the book on it. I like that the whole tension of this movie is you have the device, I have the instructions. We need each other.
Literally at this point while they're meeting, and Guillermo is perfect about his needle drops, and I've got a brand new pair of roller skates. You got a brand new key starts, and I'm like, yes.
Oh my god. Once again, that would be in Grampire. And Walter Matthau would be on rollerblades because the 90s going, get me off of these crazy things.
This movie is writing itself.
But he's got the cape. He's got the vampire cape.
I've got a question for you, John. How did you feel about the score?
Oh, I like the score for the most part. It's not. It doesn't. I don't know. I mean, it is definitely trying to evoke the tone of the movie.
I sometimes thought. I mean, in general, it works because this movie just works. But yeah, there were parts I was like going, no, this is way too big. This sounds like Guillermo said, give me a Universal horror score.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Because it has some melodrama to it that the movie doesn't really support.
Getting at, that's what I was going to say, it's getting at this tone where he's trying for this kind of grand, tragic, operatic nature to it. And I think he's trying to kind of do the Leone thing of using the score to make it seem bigger than what's literally in the frame.
That could be it.
It's grand. That's what I took it as. So it didn't really bother me, but it definitely stood out as.
There were times I thought, "Oh, this isn't very good at all," but it on the whole worked.
It mostly works. As I would be in that category too. It mostly works, I think.
Yeah.
And the movie's so self-assured in every other aspect that I think it. It almost makes the score work too.
Retroactively, or I mean not retroactively, but counterintuitively, the movie is making the score work, whereas often it's the other way around.
Right, exactly. So they talk about that, and I love the performance of this guy when he goes, "You've used the device."
Oh, it's so great. It's like he just zeroes
sees
in
the bandage on his hand, and he's like, "You son of a bitch."
But he's also like, tell me what it's like. I mean, there's this fascination, too. It's great.
Yeah, it's really good.
And he goes, you don't know what this is doing to you.
It almost feels like
you need me. I need that thing.
Yeah. It almost feels
like Jesus is like, bug off, man.
It's almost like an Indiana Jones villain going, what? What is it? Tell me. Like that greed in his eyes. Oh, it's good stuff. Great performance. I mean, across the board, everybody's great in this movie. This is where they also talk about the insect inside the device, which is the key to it.
It's an odd idea.
It does the kind of thing I like in fantasy where it's like there's an insect inside the device and that's what powers it. Like, what is the insect? We don't really know. But
that was, I guess, Falconelli's discovery is this parasitic thing.
There's this sketch in the book of the insect and stuff like that. But it's not, it's all, I love fantasy. The vaguer you can make a fantasy, the more I will accept it, actually. It's when you get lost in the weeds on stuff that I start to tune out.
But you do have Jesus going, how could that be? This thing is hundreds of years old. How could that thing still be alive? And the millionaire guy, De La Guardia, is kind of like, let's just keep going. It's like, let's not talk about that. Let's just keep going.
Yeah, we don't have anything. Yeah, and that's the way I like magic and stuff treated in movies, where you go like, we understand some of it, but I just prefer to go, magic is non-understandable by people,
pretty much.
It's incomprehensible to us. We don't know it, but it does somehow. Look, it's working on you.
Right.
So, this is where he gives him the box, or he takes the box, but it doesn't have the device in it.
Well, it's just a cheap sort of dig. He's like, here, this is what you want. And he hands him the box, which it does seem heavy and rattles.
Yeah.
And on his way out, obviously, first, like, and Perlman is there too. He's kind of like, what is that thing? And he the old guy is crazily pulling it off. He's like, oh my God, this is it.
Yeah.
And inside is the broken padlock that had been on his antique store, Jesus's antique store. So it's like a boom, gotcha. And he basically is walking out like a cocky motherfucker saying, that's what you get. I mean, essentially that's the whole thing, is like don't fuck with me anymore.
And
that's
Perlman
what you're going to get.
Has a beat that basically the subtext is like, you've won for now, pal, but don't forget, we're not going to give up on this shit,
Yeah.
Which is cool. When he comes back home, though, the device is missing, and we find that his granddaughter has hidden it.
Yeah.
And he goes from like, well, you have to like, okay, no, wait, I'm not going to get pissed about this. And he pours out tea in the little tea party set and kind of lures her out. And then we get this whole story he tells about how her father, who's presumably dead, right? I mean, obviously there's a reason the grandparents are raising her.
Yeah.
And how he had stolen his cigarettes when he was a kid because he had read about lung cancer. And this whole thing about like, well, I made him give the cigarettes back, but we had both learned a lesson about, I saw he was concerned, and that was what was important. And this is good, like, he's being kindly grandpa, but he's also being a shitty addict, going like, I see, yes, it is bad, but I'm going to keep doing it. Yeah.
I'm going to keep doing it, but I appreciate your concern.
We both know it's bad for me. I'm glad.
I'm sorry. There's just something where Guillermo Del Toro is, again, so good at, he captures children and innocence so well, even in Pacific Rim. That whole backstory where Idris Elba finds the little girl, and it's just, she is also kind of mute, but it's all done with her eyes.
She's holding the one shoe she has, and you get the sun behind the Jaeger as it opens up, and Idris Elba comes. I love that movie, man.
No, and this is just adorable because she's hiding behind like a little blanket kind of thing,
and like a blanket,
and just her little feet are poking out, and he's like, "Are you hiding? Is that you?" And again, it's kind of easy. I'm not saying that this is genius, because if you get a big-eyed child who can emote just with those eyes, and they're just being little kids, and you have someone going, I see you, and they just look up. But I was sitting there going, Jesus Christ, I got maternal urges. I was like, I want a kid, because look how adorable this is. And she just wants her grandpa to be healthy and not use the device.
Brendan did immediately Google adoption near me. And
oh my God, I would never subject a child to any of that. But it's so sweet, and
it's not, when you talk, and it's something Spielberg does too. It becomes so much a cornerstone of his filmmaking. The seeing these stories through child's eyes, and both he and Spielberg are so good at making very cute kids who still feel like human characters, not the cheap ploy of let's put a kid in here because it's cute and it will get sympathy for the audience. It's just, once again, this is just us going, that's great, this is great, you did it again, Del Toro. And look, we're coming up on another what the fuck are those movies even called? We're coming up on another Bloodstone movie, so
Subspecies.
Subspecies. That's what it is. Jesus Christ. Yeah, blood. Yeah, Subspecies. We're coming up on another one of those soonish. So let's get the enjoyment where we can here. So she gives it to him. She had put it in her teddy bear, and then the next time he uses it here in this next scene is where he puts it on his chest, and you're like, oh man, he's escalating somehow.
Yeah.
Because this is what I always think of when somebody says Cronos. The image I think of is the old man putting the thing on his chest, and like, eesh. Jesus. And also this time when he pulls it off, not only is it bleeding, there's like a goopy, sticky substance too.
Yeah, it's
disturbing.
Yeah.
And they're getting ready to go to a party, and he's got the tuxedo pants with the suspenders hanging down, and he's doing it like just give me a minute in here.
Yeah.
You're like,
it's disturbing.
God, it is just the casual.
It's like I have to shoot up in the bathroom.
Yeah, but he's doing a just put my shoes on. But and then he's like, oh, that's the sweet stuff.
That is the thing I need.
And so then I think the scene at this dance is great because we're going from this moment when he's talking about, oh, I remember when I met you, and it's so romantic, and they're dancing together, to then when he sees this guy with the bloody nose, and he instantly turns into that, like, hey, what's that? Got some blood over there?
Yeah.
You see both sides of him switch almost instantly, and it's great.
It is awesome. And again,
it's well made, well acted.
That's the thing, is that obviously great filmmakers find great casts when they can, when they have the money.
No, I'm 100% in the agreement of what the old adage that 80% of directing is casting. Like if you get the right people, you're 80% of the way there. And I love this, and it's true of a good werewolf or vampire movie where someone that we like is going to the dark side because of their curse or whatever. So the idea of this, for one thing, I'm loving the rejuvenated Jesus and the fact that this is definitely where the wife is into it for sure.
Yeah, the wife can't get enough because it's reinvigorated their marriage. She's not paying attention to anybody. They're dancing together.
They probably haven't danced together like this in a while.
Right. And literally, the second this guy at another table gets a bloody nose, it is like a predator in the veldt. Like his head just pops up and he's like, oh my God. And he follows the guy in the bathroom and he's like,
I don't know how he didn't get sued for using the predator clean.
Yeah. It's like, I'm not sure that's working.
Yeah. But no, it is that. And once again, if you're at a party with your wife, you spot a guy with a bloody nose, you can't think of anything else, you just might be a vampire.
You might just be a grandpire. And he does.
Hold on, honey, for a second. There's a guy over here pouring blood all over a table.
He gets up and follows the guy in the bathroom, and the dude sort of, he's got the bloody.
He's got a bloody nose. He goes into the bathroom.
Right, but he pulls the. Why am I blanking? He pulls the tissue paper down, and there's blood all over the sink, and he goes, it's just the season, it's too dry, and this happens, and it's terrible, and sorry about that. And meanwhile, Jesus is trying to still be normal man, just going, you okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. And the second the guy leaves, he actually leans down and doesn't start licking the blood. He's kind of like moving it with his finger, like, is this really about to happen? Because this is the first time he's done this. And he's actually kind of like, am I about to do this? Yeah. And he's just kind of moving the blood with his finger, trying to put it into rows.
This is my favorite part of the scene, though, is when this other guy comes in and he goes, oh, what the fuck?
Yes, this other guy's like, oh, God, people around here, it's the wrong kind of crowd. And he's like, probably guy did a lot of coke. And he starts mopping the blood up and then sends it down the sink.
And it's just the way this actor is playing the watching the blood run down the
sink.
And
Jesus is like, oh God, there it goes. And then that guy leaves and all that's left is this blood on the floor.
By the way, I think this is the one, this is the scene Guillermo Del Toro's like, yeah, I'm still super proud of this. I think this still works like crazy.
And actually he said it was one of the first things he thought of when he was doing this movie. Or when he was conceiving of this movie.
Yeah, because he gets on the floor, and what I like is the tension of this, because you're watching going, no, he's not really going to do it. And I also like the combination of him licking up blood is not as disgusting as it being on a bathroom floor, actually.
I know. And it's not, I mean, it is, they're in a nice hotel, so it doesn't look like a grungy bathroom floor, but it is a bathroom floor.
Yeah, it still is that. Now, Grandpire would say, now that's a good year.
Yeah, exactly. And as he's licking this, and then the capstone to the scene, which is even better, is that he's only doing this because he thought he was alone.
Yeah.
And he's licking it, and then we see shoes pass him by. Someone is still in the bathroom.
So good, because you go like, oh shit, somebody's going to spot him. But no, this foot then kicks him in the head and drags him out, and it's Ron Perlman. You're just worried somebody's caught him drinking blood. No, it's worse than that. It's our bad guy taking
him out.
Yeah.
And we do cut back to the party and the wife like going, where is he?
Yeah.
Has he abandoned me?
Well, especially because we intercut him out in the car with Perlman with the countdown to midnight. Because we should say, we haven't talked about it. This movie started at Christmas. Now it's New Year's Eve. And it is kind of like she's there with the granddaughter going, well, wait, it's midnight on New Year's Eve and he's not here. What's going on?
I do love the fact that he's a vampire for a week, essentially. I mean, this movie is like 1 week.
My week is a vampire.
My week is a grandpire.
This is going to be one wild week.
Use it or lose it. That's what I say.
Yeah, I'm making yeah, that's when the studio adds a voiceover because they're worried people aren't going to understand. I'll tell you, I had a crazy week. Yeah. Jesus Christ. I did also like in Ebert's review talking about it being Christmas that was it we wish you a Merry Christmas? Is that what he's whistling in the shop?
Yeah.
He goes, I think Ron Perlman's the first person to make that song seem sinister.
I think so.
Yeah, I like that. That was a good. The Ebert's review of this, not pervy, not much to perv about. Although I do have this interesting note, which is some explicit nudity was added in the U.S. video release, which is not what we watched because there was no nudity in this movie. And I'm trying to.
I used to have it on VHS, and I don't recall nudity at all.
That's what I'm trying to figure out. I've been trying to find what it is and where it even would be.
Would it just be something like?
Let me see here. I think there's a parent's guide here.
Well, yeah. What does Perlman go to a strip club or something in a scene?
I'm just going like, and it was added specifically for. We're going to see, according to the church, there's a legend. No, it doesn't even say once again. It just says, according to, there is allegedly a more explicit version of this movie.
Huh.
No, but because sex and nudity, none, according to the parent's guide here, which is true. Take the kids then.
Take the kids. They'll love this.
Well, that's what I like about the fairy tale aspect of it, though, right? It is, we've come to think of that as a kid's movie. So the pieces of this movie, little girl's grandfather, it seems like it should go down Grampire territory.
Yeah. And thank God it
and
does
also
not.
You have like one of Del Toro's best friends and fellow Mexican filmmakers, Alfonso Cuarón, is doing The Little Princess around the same time.
Yep.
Which is a beautiful movie that I just doesn't do anything for me, but beautifully made.
And incredibly erotic. Wait, is that the one I'm thinking of?
I hope not. She's such a little princess. But yeah,
I don't think you had to add anything to it. It was already sexy enough.
They really nailed it.
It seems weird that would have happened, but that does sound like an American distributor who is scared that no one's going to come to this horror movie unless it's got boobs.
Yeah. Quick, add some boobs.
And that's just pathetic. But I'm glad that he got to go in once he became as huge as he was.
Yeah.
And do a director's version to clean stuff up.
Yeah. I'm just trying to see where. I'm still trying to figure this out. I'll keep you informed. If I can find it. Cronos. Oh, that's a different Cronos that apparently has a lot of nudity.
Okay.
Anyway, that's with an H. Cronos. So, yeah. So here we get Ron Perlman beating this our hero seemingly to death as he's trying to get answers about where the device is.
Right. What's so great is obviously we've seen that it doesn't take much for this character, who is Angel de la Guardia. It doesn't take much for him to kind of snap. And the whole thing here is this old man keeps frustrating him. And all he wants, he doesn't care about the old man. He just wants to give his uncle whatever he wants so that, again, he will get all the stuff and all that thing. And here, he is so infuriated that he knows it's a mistake to kill this guy. You can actually see him going, oh man, I can't stop. I'm going to end up killing this guy and I won't get any information out of him. And he just doesn't care.
Yep.
At this point, he is so angry at this guy for daring to
and this
taunt him and all that.
This is classic Perlman play, and Perlman always plays a great bruiser, enforcer kind of guy.
Well, I love how over the top he is here. It is so awesome that when he, like his big like he's just sort of so excited to get the guy down the ground. He's just like, whoa! And then when he's in the car and he's kicking the car off, he's like, fuck yeah!
There's a great thing Del Toro talked about that he wanted all... Oh, yeah, here you go. The two De La Guardia characters were deliberately intended to be somewhat unreal, like comic book characters, Del Toro said. He explained that he did this as sort of revenge against Hollywood films for having Mexican characters that are stereotypically evil so many times.
Oh, I kind of dig that.
I do too, because it is. These guys are so like, yes, and it is.
Yes, literally, you have Perlman doing a bwahaha.
Yeah, and so that's him going like, all right, we'll see who the comic book villain is now. And it's great. And it also works in juxtaposing their world to the very naturalistic and warm family world of Jesus and his family. So I think it's once again another thumbs up for me on something in this movie.
So basically,
he puts him in a car
Jesus
here.
has been beaten, put into the car.
Yeah.
And then Ron Perlman kicks the car off the cliff.
And I like Perlman almost has this moment once it crashes where he's like, yeah, no, this will work. Like,
like, okay, all right, well, that didn't go the way I thought it was going to, but it's like, whatever.
You can see the gears in his brain turning like, okay, well, so I clipped him. He went off the road. Nothing I could do. Okay, I got it.
He's like, that's what I will tell him.
Yeah.
And so Jesus is dead.
So it seems.
Or is he?
So it seems, because we see him crashed in the car and he's all bloody going like, oh, and he's dead. His body's dead. Now, we know what kind of movie we're dealing with, so I had a presumption we were going to see, and I've seen this movie before, but it's been a long time. But yes, let's assume. We lead to maybe my favorite character in the movie, which is the guy at the funeral home.
Yeah, he's great.
I love this guy, and once again, giving somebody life. Here he's done this amazing job to make Jesus look presentable he's like Freddie Rodriguez on 6 Feet Under, where he's doing the makeup and stuff. And I love the other guy.
Oh, he looks great.
Yeah.
And his partner comes in and is like, that is some of your finest work.
And the guy's like, I know, right? Incredible, the work I put into this.
And he's like, yeah, too bad that he's going into the oven. And he's like, what?
You let me
I didn't know that
all of this? The fuck, man? Well,
it's so great.
It is great. It's funny. I'm legitimately laughing at this now. Seemingly our main character is dead, and I'm laughing. I'm laughing here. So yeah, meanwhile, we get Ron Perlman listening to the plastic surgery audiobook before his uncle calls him up. And I do love, even when the uncle's calling him, he's like, oh, God damn it. Like, Perlman's like, fucking hell. This is again, here we go. I'm going to get chewed out. And it's just like, yeah, how could you let him die? But then he keeps going, wait a minute. What happened to his heart? Was his heart okay?
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't know. I didn't look. Guy was
dead.
Yeah,
that's the thing, is that, again, the uncle is like, I don't give a shit if he's alive or dead, but what about his heart? Because he knows I've got to get that device, and he thinks it might
puncture his heart, is what he says.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's like, I don't know. It fell out. He drove off a cliff, man. And he's like, well, you're gonna go down to that funeral home, and you're gonna find. I do love. There is something funny about the power dynamics of this dying, withered old man pushing around fucking giant in his prime Ron Perlman. And he's just like, you better get down there. And he's like, whatever.
All right, I'll do it.
Oh, jeez. I mean, it's actually similar to, and I bring this movie up all the time. It's one of my favorite movies. There's a poster of it behind me. Drive. But it's the same thing when you got Albert Brooks screaming at Ron Perlman in that movie. And he's like, oh, jeez, boss. I don't, come on, Bernie. Love it. Fucking Albert Brooks robbed of an Oscar for that movie, and I'll move on.
Yeah, but I agree, and I love Albert Brooks,
and he's incredible and terrifying in that movie, which is not what you would think. So he goes down to we see Perlman at the funeral or at the wake, looking in, and going like, doesn't seem like anything happened to the heart. Okay.
Yeah.
And then he's going to go back into the crematorium. But what's this? We see before the casket is closed, it's empty.
Yeah.
But the guy running the oven doesn't, because he's also just casually eating a banana while doing that.
It's one of those things where we see the coffin there, waiting to go along the conveyor into the oven, and it is closed, and the guy's like having trouble lighting the oven, so he has to leave. He goes down. I mean, it's a bit of business. He's like, he's got to fix there's a leak, and he ties... I'm like, man, a gas leak, and he's very casually going, I'll just tie a cloth over it, tighten it, there you go, that fixed it. Then he goes back upstairs, and he doesn't clock it, but we do. The coffin is open.
Yeah.
He doesn't look into it, but he absently just sort of shuts that lid like, I guess it was always open. And then he sends it in. So basically, Jesus has gotten out of the coffin while he went down.
By the way, I just casually did that. Yeah, but I'm going John Ratzenberger as the funeral guy in Grampire going, yeah, everything's looking just fine here.
There you go.
And Mathau comes out going, man, it was hot in there.
Mathau and Ratzenberger, a power duo.
Hey
I wish
there,
that had happened.
Walter, how about a beer?
Norm. No.
Yeah, that's Cliff. So he comes in there and they shove what we now know is the empty coffin into the oven, and Perlman has come back there with, well, I was a close friend. Can I just take one last look at him?
Yeah.
And I do love, once again, this weird funeral guy going, yeah, how do you like him? Medium or well done? Your friend's burning up in there.
It's great.
Yeah, because it's just like, another day, another dollar for me. I'm burning people left and right. I wasn't worried about a gas leak. I'm not worried about shit. This is the business.
Yeah, he's very cash about, this is what I do. I burn bodies.
And this is where we get deep into the horror shit, because we had seen this earlier. So now we've got Jesus like stumbling around on the streets. He's got the corpse makeup on, like the makeup they put on him to make him look more alive, but it makes him look more corpse-like. It's
what's
disturbing.
Really weird. Yes, there's that. And what's really weird is the backwards suit.
Yes. Very much so.
So he's wearing a backwards suit. He's staggering around looking very much now like a corpse or vampire. And he's got the stitches of where they would have, closed up his wounds.
And he's got the stitches in his mouth, which we saw earlier.
Right.
So
his mouth is sewn closed, so he pulls the thread out of his own lips.
That's more implied. You just see the thread coming out, but you're like, fuck.
Yep. And then I do love it, since he's staggering around out in the cold and the rain. And this is very, of course, atmospheric. And then he finds like a blanket to throw over his shoulders, which is, again, it is Guillermo going like, see, I'm hitting horror tropes. Well, that is his cape.
He really does it later. My favorite beat of that is later with the little girl.
Yeah, it's like, there is his cape. And he gives you
a grounded vision, but it's like, there's your silhouette of the vampire with the cape.
Yep.
He
goes back to his home and sees his wife grieving, and he's like, I can't just walk in.
Yeah.
So he just hides.
And it's the little girl that finds him.
The little girl finds him, and he's kind of in the attic, and it's just adorable. She's emptying out her toy chest. It's like she already knows what he needs, which is just... crazy.
There is something that does kind of read as real to me with kids to a certain extent, of just like, oh yeah, okay. Like, I can just accept this.
Yeah.
In a way that an adult couldn't.
Yeah, but also I love that she just kind of gets the dynamics or the rules. So she's making him kind of a coffin. And while they're doing this, the sun is coming through slats or holes in the ceiling. And this is his first exposure to like, shit, ow, sun burns. Ugh.
Sun
and again,
good.
No one says vampire. It's just like, he's like, ugh.
She has the toy chest that's on the hinge. So when he gets in there and when he comes out, you get the of the coffin open. Oh, it's great.
It's right there with the Vampire's Kiss with the overturned couch.
Yes. Oh, another favorite of mine too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like when people are doing. I mean, that's cleverness. That's clever filmmakers.
Yes,
you know?
I like also when people acknowledge that, because even some great vampire movies will still lean on it has to be a cough, and I'm like, no, they just need to hide from the light. Okay, so it could be literally anything, literally a box. It could be that.
But you're playing on the movie trope with the hinged lid and stuff like that, you know. And the sound of it is classic, and the way he rises up feels very vampire-y. And that's the thing. That's the thing we're saying.
And she gives him her teddy bear.
Yeah.
Again, adorable. Jesus Christ.
But so he writes a letter to his wife, going, "Okay, honey, I am alive, but I can't see you yet because I have an appointment of sorts."
Yeah, and if I come back from it, I hope that you'll still be able to love me when you see me, because I'm all kinds of fucked up.
Interesting, very unexpected writing style for this character to have.
Yeah, exactly.
But so he's gonna go to the factory to get the book. He's gonna steal the book, is the whole thing here. But the little granddaughter tags along with him against his wishes, but ultimately she does go with him.
Well, they're a team.
Yep.
And they break in, and weirdly, she's vital because like the place is locked, but she can fit into this little side window. So he pops her in, and then she's able to unlock the door to let him in. And he's like, "Well, that worked."
I do like this very you talk about like Hitchcock tension sort of cut to, we see them sneaking around, and then we just see the uncle, you know, get up in his bed and go like, "What the hell?" Oh, you know, and he comes out. I do love. He's not yelling or anything. He's just like, "So you've come for the book, huh?"
Yeah, and at the same time, he rings a little alarm to let his nephew know there's work to be done, and that's where the nephew Ron Perlman is listening to the audiobook about plastic surgery, and he's like, "What is it now?"
When one considers a cosmetic procedure, I just the audio is perfect.
Plastic surgery right for you?
Yeah, it has that droll, boring narrator on it too. Many things to consider when preparing for a cosmetic surgery.
It's great.
Yeah, it's great stuff. And he's like,
"Okay, fine, I'll go take care of the old man."
Yeah, and so he comes, and this is where he goes, "Well, yeah," he goes, "You've been reborn." He's like, "Reborn? Look at me, I have rotting flesh." He's like, "Peel it off. What do you find?" And this is where we get the white, the creepy, monstery kind of white underneath the dead skin, which is almost more disturbing.
Yeah, and he only, I mean, again, it makes sense because this is not what he came to do, but he only peels like a couple of patches off.
I love the design of this character with just the patches of the white skin.
Right, and then...
Can I get NECA or somebody to make me a figure of this? I would buy that, man. That's a cool design.
Yeah.
I would love to have the vampire Jesus from this.
It's a little bit later that he full-on digs his hand into his stomach and peels off a huge chunk.
Yeah, that is a little bit more messed up. But as he's doing this dude just fucking stabs him.
Yep.
Does not get him in the heart though, because he gets him down on the ground and then says, "And now for the heart," which feels very like Hammer horror. You know, very grandiose. Why would you say that? But it is cool. Or a comic book thing, too, like the panel of the guy. And now for the heart. Before he just gets clubbed upside the head.
Yep.
Oh, he goes down hard on this one.
The old man, I mean, whether or not it's because of his vampirism, but he's got fight left in him.
Yeah.
And Jesus ain't taking no shit.
Yeah. And so the little girl, though, smacks him good.
The little girl
cracks his head open.
Saves her grandpa with that, yeah.
Cracks his head open because he is pouring out blood, and it is it's a little snack time for Jesus on that there.
And he's kind of like, "Sorry, granddaughter, that you have to see this, but granddad's got to eat."
Yeah, Grandpa has got to feed. Slap the feed bag on. No, seriously, get that bag. We're gonna get all this blood. There would be something. Can somebody fetch me a to-go cup?
Yeah, of course.
There's another joke. That movie writes itself. I do think that sometimes when I watch the rare times I'm watching those,
this stuff doesn't keep.
Yeah,
that's what I've learned.
There's so many of those '90s family comedies that I go, I could write that in a weekend. That counted as a studio screenplay. Good Lord.
And they are talented, but when you look at some of the stuff that Thomas Lennon and Ben, whatever his name is.
Robert Ben Garant,
Robert Ben Garant. You sit there going, that did not strain them.
Going, and I think they're fairly upfront about that, right? That it's like, that pays the bills, and then we can make Reno 911 and stuff with state people and weirdo stuff that isn't... although they got nominated for an Emmy just the other night for the new Reno 911 movie, which was cool.
Oh, great! I look forward to watching it. I haven't seen it.
It's on Paramount Plus. I recommend it. The Reno 911 Sheriff's Department trying to track down Q of QAnon.
Perfect.
They're of course the only people who are equipped to deal with it.
Oh my god! Yeah, I gotta check it out.
Very funny. So let's see. So he's now seemingly dead. Ron Perlman's joy at finding his uncle dead is so great. He's like,
oh
yes,
man,
yes.
That's another moment of ha ha, and he does like a dance,
and he does like a mine. It's all mine now, mine.
Yes,
but then the guy wakes up, unfortunately. But now it's too late for this guy. Perlman snaps his neck with his foot, man.
Because in the end, kind of awesomely. And I guess it also allows you to feel okay with the movie. Our vampire, our grandpire, he never kills. Even this guy who was trying to kill him, he doesn't kill. I mean, he to save his own life or to save his granddaughter, he does. But essentially. So he isn't even responsible.
Nobody's
for
shedding
the
too many tears
death.
about Ron Perlman, though.
Yeah, that's right. But Ron Perlman is the one that does the death blow to his uncle because he's celebrating, and then the uncle's moving his arm like, "Help me!" And he's like, "No, man, I've waited too long for this." And he fucking just puts his foot on his neck, and
brutal.
Snaps it.
Cold-blooded, man. Jesus.
It is cold as ice.
Yeah. It's my. And doesn't he say something like, "It's my time now," or something like that?
Yeah.
And Jesus Christ. And then this is where Jesus hits him now with the cane, breaking his nose. And Prison Permanent even goes, "Not the fucking nose again," or whatever.
Yeah, he's like going, "Jesus, again with my nose."
Yeah. Come on.
Come on!
I think of Luke Wilson from Anchorman when he gets his other arm pulled off. This is getting to be goddamn ridiculous. So fucking funny, man.
So good.
Yeah. So then this leads to a chase up, out the window, up on a ladder, up to the sign for the De La Guardia, which is a cool, once again, kind of Hitchcocky set piece.
Yeah, and also kind of Hammer, where it's like to the roof of the cathedral or that kind of thing.
This is where Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee would have their final showdown.
It is also reminiscent of the end of Highlander.
Oh yeah, it is.
Where it's like, let's rush up and we're on the roof next to the neon sign.
Yeah.
And there can be only one, by the way. I don't know if you should.
There can be only one, and there can be only one because Jesus is going to tackle Ron Perlman off of this roof, and he'll survive because he's a vampire or a grandpire, and Ron Perlman is all kinds of dead.
Yeah, it's kind of great because at least, Jesus is kind of he basically just says like, for me, it's only pain.
Yeah.
He goes, for me, if we drop off this roof, it'll hurt. But for me, it's just pain because I'm a fucking immortal vampire right now. And for you, it's all over. So he basically goes, let's go.
Yeah.
And they do. They just plummet together. And, that's the case.
That's what I want to hear. Well, for me, it's only pain.
Yeah.
But for you, you're done, motherfucker.
Yeah. And at this point, this is where, we haven't touched on the fact that there are scenes throughout where Jesus is fighting for his soul, which is kind of great, where he knows that the path he's on, he won't be himself anymore. And of course the big thing is, and this is coming up here, but the scene of like she has blood on her hand, his granddaughter, and he is like going, I'm going for it, and she's like, and then he fights his own will, and it's beautifully acted, where he's like, no, that is a step too far. And so basically, even though he could live forever, he could go back and be with his wife and so forth, he's like, no, I'll end up being a monster. Oh, good stuff.
Great stuff. And so he smashes the Cronos device.
Which the billionaire LaGuardia had said, like, because early in their first confrontation, he's like, I'll just smash it. And he goes, don't you understand? If you destroy that, you die too. And so that had been set up.
And he dies peacefully with his family around him.
What is confusing a little bit, because him smashing the device and everything, he's not at home.
Right.
But somehow, I guess maybe Aurora made her way back to the house, somehow let her grandmother know, because the last shot it's very almost religious and very sweet and sad, but it is the wife and the granddaughters by the bedside, and it's just the old man, but now he's completely that sort of white, chalky white body, and he's just dead in bed. And they're standing there looking at him sad, and it's this movie.
It's so good. Something else Ebert called the movie, we talk about religious, he goes, this movie is very Catholic.
It is,
and he talks about that is certainly something you see across a lot of Mexican filmmakers, is that part of that culture is,
Well, and I actually think that it does also lend to the fairy tale nature, because a lot of Catholicism filtered through other cultures, and that includes Native American and Mexican, takes on aspects of their previous beliefs mixed with Catholicism, so there's almost a magical quality.
Well, and this is also Del Toro talks about on the interview. He goes, "This was me right as I'm becoming a lapsed Catholic," and he goes, he said, when I was making this, I thought all my movies would have to do with lapsed Catholicism. He goes, they don't really, but he goes, but at this
glad
time,
I got over that.
Yeah, he was going like, at this time I was really wrestling with Catholicism, so that's why this one kind of the most on the nose deals with it, he said.
Sure, you know, and I do like that as he's I can't remember if it's after he destroys the device and he's dying or before he does it. I think it's after, when he's actually ebbing away and dying. He just goes, I am Jesus Christ.
Yes.
I am Jesus Christ.
It's after he destroys that where it's like, I will not lose my soul.
I will not die. Yeah, I will not lose my soul and my humanity. I am this guy, and that's how I'm going to die.
That's so good. Like, that's just that turns, even though our main character is going to die, into this triumphant, heroic ending of like, I will not give up who I am. I am Jesus Christ. I love that, man. I mean, like I said,
too bad this movie sucks so bad. I mean,
this is one of the best ones we've watched on the whole show. Really, this is a top tier movie we've done doing this whole thing. This is just solid stuff, and it's movie one. He gets better at making movies.
Yes, he does.
It's incredible because I don't even know what I would put at number one for this guy. He's done. I mean, The Shape of Water is amazing and a beautiful movie, and Pan's Labyrinth is. I think
yes. I think things that are so, because one of his, I'm not going to say faults, but one of his telltales is that his stuff is occasionally scattershot. I think of him very much like a Grant Morrison, where the ideas are huge, but sometimes as a story it doesn't quite work.
That's kind of how I felt about Crimson Peak, which I thought was gorgeous, but I left feeling kind of empty. It's a stunning movie, though. It is a beautiful film. Like I said, even the failures are worth watching.
Definitely worth watching.
But I don't revisit that one.
But the things at his top are the things where it all comes together and feels completely realized. So this one actually would be high up for me. But I mean, Shape of Water and Pan's Labyrinth, those two are
great. And like I said, even the
dare I say masterpieces.
But I mean, like, even the fucking Hellboy movies, and those are studio franchise comic book adaptations. Particularly that second one is so Guillermo. And, it's just beautiful. And I know Mignola's like, my comics. I'm going, yeah, dude, these are kind of better than any other. And I love the comics, but I'm going, Golden Army is gorgeous.
It is gorgeous. It's a thing like King and looking at the work of Kubrick for The Shining. It's a thing where the author can't quite go, man, you changed. It doesn't feel like my thing. And I'm like, yeah, but your thing is great, undeniably. What you're getting here is it filtered through another genius.
Yeah. And it is a thing where it's like, well, and also luckily Mike Mignola made a more faithful Hellboy movie that everybody loved across the board. Oh, wait a minute. Right. It was more faithful. I'll leave it at that. I'll say that.
I just think wrong guy. Wrong director. Not the story I thought was bad, but they also did try to squeeze way too much. They tried to jam.
I mean, it is very faithful to like three great arcs.
Right?
Going like,
it's just like X3, where you're like going, dude, either do Dark Phoenix or do the Mutant Cure.
You can't
do not smack them together.
Nope. And that's how I felt about it. I'm going like, man, I like a lot of what's on the table in that Hellboy reboot, but man, this thing is just whipping by me. I can't get a grasp on it. And I love Harbor, man. Good choice. Just
great choice.
Yeah, just not
also
that.
Bad makeup. I mean, there's
much lower budget than the Del Toro movies, and it showed.
Which is surprising because you look at Hellboy, the first one, and as great a Guillermo Del Toro film as it is, and as great a Hellboy movie as it is, you can see the limited budget they had.
You can.
It's like, it's Bucharest for New York.
But the rest of it is working so well that I'm letting it slide, you know?
I am totally letting it slide because Hellboy is surrounded by kittens and eating enormous bowls of spaghetti. I'm just like, dude.
Yeah. So we obviously the highest of recommendations for Cronos.
If you haven't seen it, what's your problem?
Yeah.
If you have seen it, it's time to revisit it.
We were just doing that on Panel Up the other night. If you haven't seen that movie, that's your own fault. Next week, I think we might, I don't know, I've never seen this movie. We might be taking a step down as we talk about, we're back to Egypt, Brendan, for 1993's The Mummy Lives. Starring Tony Curtis.
To tell you the truth, I have never heard of this movie.
From producer Yoram Globus.
Oh, boy.
This is post-canon split, but on his own, Yoram Globus.
Why couldn't Golan and Globus work things out?
Oh, boy.
They were a mighty force.
I know. This is supposedly based on the Edgar Allan Poe story, Some Words with a Mummy. I don't know. We'll see.
Some Words with a Mummy.
I don't even know that one. Not his most beloved, I don't think. But
well, I have never heard of it, and I'm willing to bet it will cause me stomach cramps.
I'm just excited to see Tony Curtis going, you get out of here, you mummy.
Tony Curtis,
you gotta go.
90s.
93. This is I can't think of much that he did around this time.
No, I'd be hard pressed to remember things he had done in the 80s.
That's right, you stupid mommy, get out.
Yonder lies the castle of my father.
Oh, he was on an episode of Lois and Clark: The New Adventures of Superman around that time too. So
great,
yeah,
love
that's
show.
What he's doing.
You know me,
yeah.
That's my ideal Superman.
Dean Cain is Superman, folks.
Still.
So yeah, we'll talk about that, and we're gonna have a guest with us because it's a Globus production, and that connects to canon. My co-host from the Action Shelf, Michael Lisman, will be joining us for The Mummy Lives.
Has he recovered completely from his COVID nightmare?
I think he has. He's still trying to shake off Phantom of the Mall, though, the last time he was on the show, which I think weakened the immune system enough to get the COVID, unfortunately. So
I gotta say,
yeah,
this is a rough. I mean, Elliot has been here for some good ones and bad.
Yeah.
But I'd say Listman, he's a brave man.
He's had a lot of fun with the Phantom of the Mall because
it's true, and actually that movie was fun to watch.
I know because I keep going. Geez, I'm sorry, made you watch it. He goes, no, I loved it, man. It was so much fun. Yeah, I think he had not once like the Action Shelf. Not doing this week to week helps a lot when you just pop in and watch something goofy. So
I think still to this day, when I think of Phantom of the Opera, I think of Jim Cotta. So that was an excellent.
Can I just say I love. You've got the DVD release for Mummy Lives, and there is Tony Curtis in what is that? It's not a turban. What's the thing?
Fifth helmet?
No, the Lawrence of Arabia with the sheet and the tie around his head kind of thing.
It is a turban.
Yeah, I guess that kind of thing. And he's like, "That's right, I'm in Egypt, baby." So looking forward to that. That'll be next week on the show. But that's going to do it for this week's episode of Campbell and Jones Meet the Monsters. I'm John Campbell.
I'm Brendan Jones.
And remember, there are such things as monsters.
And by the way, I have to say, this movie made me hungry for Mexican food. It honestly did. Oh, I think that's what I'm going to do for dinner.